and today I'm going to talk about a few characters who met this exception. So one exception I noticed was Fancy off the Jamie Foxx show. I know people are probably screaming at me or typing in their keyboard. Fancy was brown skinned, and Fancy was. But I think in the scheme of colorism, that brown skin is often seen as an in-between, what some people would call safe skin. And I also think that Fancy's pretty privilege in itself saved her. And Fancy had layers of desirability from her physical shape to how she dressed and just different features she had. Fancy was a bellhop on the Jamie Foxx show and was usually pursued by Jamie or some other businessman or male onlooker. Fancy, to me, her desirability or safe skin allowed her to have a character that was smart and assertive, and she stood on business, to be frank, and I liked her character. And another person who meets this exception was Maxine off of Living Single. So Maxine, also known as Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, was a feminist in my opinion. She didn't center her life around men. I think because her being an attorney, she was always busy too. Maxine was confident and witty and seemed as desirable in my opinion on the show. I'd argue that her being also in Brooklyn or New York City gave the show a sense of pride and the characters a sense of pride on their blackness and how they presented it. I like that Maxine was dark-skinned, petite, and had freeform locks and never compromised herself. I also noticed when she would argue with Kyle, it wasn't necessarily about her features per se, but just them going back and forth and slight sexual tension as they eventually did hook up and or get in a relationship. In some regards, I guess Maxine did play the strong black woman lead, yet Khadijah did too, and Khadijah had a lighter brown skin complexion than her. So I feel like Maxine Shaw, her character was very fair in how it depicted a darker skinned black woman. Another character who I felt had darker skin, and again, I know darker skin is relative, but is Jaleesa from A Different World. Jaleesa was an older, non-traditional college student, and I think that factor made her also more assertive and not taking crap from others like a younger Kimberly did. And so anyway, her character on the show, to me, her age allowed her also to have clear boundaries. I also think her being a taller black woman kind of gave her a sense of assertion as well. Ironically, she did get attention from older men on the show or men who were her age, like Sinbad, who played like the resident assistance director, and then the general who was on campus and was an older man who she ended up marrying. Jaleesa was brown skinned again, and she was already older, so I feel like she knew what she wanted out of life. And so that, in a sense, kind of shaped her character. And she was just a more practical character. So now I'm going to talk more about Kimberly on A Different World. So Kimberly, to me, she was like a perfectionist. She was this cute, dark-skinned girl with like this like baby face and just like beautiful curls. And she was like really bubbly. When she first meets Whitley, you can tell there's like some class issues and pretty privilege. And Whitley happened to be this young woman from Virginia whose parents were well off. She was like lighter complected, and she wasn't, to me, used to sharing space. And so she came off very abrasive to her roommate, who was Kimberly. Kimberly seemed to come from a more humble background, and she didn't get ruffled about a lot of things, especially space in the show. She seemed more concerned in general about her studies and committing to her studies. Kimberly also worked while she was in school in the cafe, and she didn't seem to be interested in dating much in the first season. When Kimberly ended up dating a white guy, she was shamed, which I thought was very interesting because one, a lot of people will argue that white men often like darker skinned women, and also just the hypocrisy around black women's agencies and what they can do. When we think about Whitley's character, she came from money. Her father was a judge. She even got interested in Dwayne after seeing him on the plane from her internship to Europe. So her level of class was just a bit different than a lot of people. But it was obvious that Whitley had many suitors throughout the show. And I think aside from Jaleesa, she was among the first to get married on the show. Comparing Kimberly to Whitley, Kimberly was kind of, in my opinion, treated like a lab dog. She was very kind and patient and smart, and she was definitely in her studies. But I used to get so triggered when Whitley would scream, "Kimberly!" It just seemed like this level of subjugation. And I know that Whitley had a dominant personality, but the entitlement to me had a lot to do with light skin and pretty privilege. One thing I do like about A Different World is that it showed like different lessons of blackness and what black people go through. And it didn't shy away from like important topics, especially as the season evolved. There was this episode where Kimberly played the Mammy character, which I don't think is anything wrong with this because it was kind of like a history lesson. But I think that also showed how historically darker skinned women, especially like darker skinned plus size women, were more subjugated to being servants or just house like the helper, etc. Ironically, with A Different World, season 2 came with more, I guess you could say, controversy and characters. There was another character by the name of Charmaine. Charmaine was loud and assertive, and I think a lot of people tolerated her because she was funny and humorous and outspoken, but she also had this like really unique voice. Charmaine, just like Kimberly, worked in the den. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm not saying that it's anything wrong with working in college. I'm just talking about the class issues that presented itself. Because I don't remember anyone who was a lighter skinned character besides Denise working in the den, and that's after she lost her scholarship. So to me, class and colorism often play a big issue in real life as well, in opportunities. Again, I know that many people can work in places like that despite their color, but I just thought it was interesting how on the show they always had like a darker skinned person working in the cafeteria. Another thing I noticed on the show too, there, don't get me wrong, there were women who had to deal with like essay, whether it was Freddie or Whitley or just dealing with some crazy guys. But when it actually came to like women being assaulted, it seemed like they allowed the darker skinned women to be assaulted. Okay, so there was this character named Gina, and she had a boyfriend named Dion. Dion was like a rapper. He was really jealous, and he basically beat on her when they went to like this cabin. And again, I think the episode was really powerful, but I just thought it was interesting how a darker skinned woman actually happened to be the victim of something like that in the show. And don't get this twisted, I don't think that should happen to any woman. But again, it was just interesting to me how that actually was depicted through a darker skinned woman. So I say all that to say that I do think that television serves as a medium for people to see themselves and connect, especially in American society. So Alicia Renee talks about the 5 major functions of media. One being surveillance. The media has the lookout role of scanning the society to define and describe the different racial and ethnic groups within it. 2, correlation. The media helps the consumers of the media take stock of these groups and determine how and where they fit into the society. 3, transmission. Media defines what the social culture and heritage of the society are and transmits them to other members of the society. 4, entertainment. This function emphasizes that communication can also entertain the society. 5, economic. The economic purpose of the media is to sell people to advertisers. When understanding the impacts of television, it is vital to understand that one might not have the same lens or vision when watching television. Some viewers are not able to seek knowledge beyond what television provides. Viewers who are unable to seek credible information outside of what is portrayed on television are often subject to the impact of the negativism of television's portrayals to a much greater degree than those who can and often do seek elsewhere for verification of what is seen in this medium. So I think that's what can make these type of images dangerous when younger people especially don't know that people are more than their skin complexion, or when people don't just have greater conversations about how we should treat each other despite our skin complexions. I know that, again, subconsciously and consciously, colorism is presented in this society, but one thing I did appreciate overall in the 90s, how you did see characters doing different things and advocating for themselves. Though there were some negative aspects of a lot of these characters, most of these characters, especially the darker skinned women, showed that they had to be assertive and unfortunately fight for their right to be respected. And I think in general, you have to be assertive in life. I think it's just unfortunately and tiresome when darker skinned women are often fighting for the presence to be more than what the general society says about them, because Black women aren't monolith. And of course, every light-skinned person too isn't stuck up. But when we put these people in these type of characters, it's just, I feel like, programs our minds to just see Black people as kind of limited or one-dimensional. And so that's why I want to talk about this today. Let me know what you all think down below. And thank you for listening to Books and Looks TV. I'll see you next time.